Hi, I'm Callum Smith and you're watching Matchboxing.com.
Hi, it's Jonathan Schrager here. I'm here today with IFL TV's Kugan Cassius. I can't specify the name of the hotel we're in today, Kugan, but I can confirm it's not a Holiday Inn.
It's definitely not a Holiday Inn. Absolutely not.
How are we doing today?
Very well, thank you, Jonathan.
Good stuff. Right, I just wanted to start really asking you about how you first got into boxing, because obviously I first probably saw you, especially when I look back in hindsight, when you were security guard for Ricky Hatton. How did that all come about?
That actually come about probably about a year prior to Ricky's fight with Manny Pacquiao. Probably not as long as a year, probably about 7, 8 months before that fight. Got introduced to Ricky through Jane Couch, who was a mutual friend of ours, and I was out with Ricky a few times, etc., etc. And Ricky asked me to come out to camp with him for his camp against the fight with Pacquiao, and it wasn't necessarily just like security or anything like that. It was more someone to sort of be with him throughout the camp.
Okay.
Just if he needed anything, taken anywhere, that sort of thing. So it wasn't strictly, where the sheer size of me, and I'm powerful as well, John. No, it's just, it was sort of tagline like, oh, security, but Ricky Hatton isn't, do you know what I mean, Adolf Hitler or whatever. Everyone loves him, and in America as well, the Americans loved him. There was a lot of Brits out there, and it's all a positive vibe towards Ricky Hatton. So it wasn't like, you know, standing in front of stray bullets or anything. So so I went out to camp with Ricky, and we was there for roughly 2 months, I think it was. Yeah, roughly 2 months. So between 7 weeks and 8 weeks we was there. And then I was just a boxing fan, because, you know, I'd grown up like everyone else with an interest in boxing, but funnily enough, like, boxing has never been my first sport of interest. It's always been football. But I always used to watch boxing when I was in my teens, into my 20s, and the same faces that everyone else used to watch.
Yeah. Starting
with Naz, that's my first memories of actually watching live boxing, was Naz's reign as whatever he was.
Yeah.
And and then Nigel Benn, Frank Bruno, these were the sort of people that I was watching, or first remember watching, from many years ago. And obviously Ricky as well, from when Ricky was fighting.
Yeah.
And so I was out there anyway. So I was out there in camp with Ricky. Made some friends out there in America, and people in boxing that I wouldn't have known before, and etc., etc. But that really had nothing to do with how the stuff with iFILMLONDON, as it was then called, came about. We actually started off in film. There wasn't an initial plan to do anything in boxing. Me and James Helder started this off as a behind-the-scenes film company. So we'd be doing, which is known as EPK, so like, people that don't know what that is, on the extras of a DVD, you always get the features you can click on, blah blah, where you'd see behind-the-scenes footage. That's known as EPK.
Yeah.
And we were doing that, so we worked on a couple of films, etc., etc. And we started covering a few events, but not really boxing related. We was covering all different types of like celebrity events, charity events, music events.
Yeah.
And we were just, we were interviewing people, and it's all quite informal and loose, if you like.
Yeah.
And then the first show we actually done was back in 2010, which was a Hatton show up in Bolton, where Matthew was fighting for the European title. So we went up there, but again, not really with a right. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna try and do this or that or anything.
Yeah.
We did a couple of interviews. I think we'd done about 5 or 6 interviews, and I think 3 or 4 of them didn't come out because we were very like, we're amateur as it is now, but we were even doubly amateur back then with like knowing what sound levels sounded right. It was kind of a case of just turn the camera on, make sure the red light's on. In fact, for the first few interviews we'd done, the mic weren't even plugged into the thing. That was plugged in, but there was no sound coming out where we hadn't adjusted levels or anything.
Yeah.
So I was standing there, and James would be standing there with a microphone, and there's nothing going on.
Yeah.
So, but like we'd watch it back, and all you can hear was the sound from the camera. But
Yeah.
we thought, I can hear it, so it must be. We didn't have a clue. So that was the first actual boxing show we done. Now that was like November 2010.
Yeah.
From then up until about March 2011, there wasn't nothing we'd done. We went to Liverpool at the Olympia for a prize fighter show. I'd never met Eddie Hearn before. This is the first time that I'd gone to, since then, to a show with the camera, with the idea of doing some interviews. I knew who Eddie Hearn was,
Yeah.
but just knew him as the son to Barry Hearn and nothing more.
Yeah.
So we went to the show at Liverpool and did a few interviews with just personalities within boxing. So like interviews like John Conti, Steve Bunce was there. Did a little bit with Eddie.
Yeah.
It's funny, that interview, it's really cringy watching that back now. Like the first, it was about a couple of minutes and it was just like, yeah, you're right, Eddie Hearn? Yes, how's the boxing going? Yeah, it's going to be great tonight, blah, 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 blah. All right, thanks for talking to us, Eddie. Yeah, it's quite very, yeah, so that show there was done. And then from then onwards, we kind of started gradually doing more shows.
Yeah.
And this is when Eddie, not when he first started, but he hadn't been doing it for that long, so there wasn't the massive shows coming from Eddie Hearn then.
Yeah.
It was actually like Frank Warren that was putting on the Gal Groves, later on in the year, Bellew Cleverly,
Yeah.
and all these very big shows.
Yeah.
So we were kind of doing stuff at the first, predominantly, even though we do the same promoters now, but back like when we first started,
Yeah.
the bulk of our stuff was all coming from all the show that Frank Warren was doing.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of stick on the internet. Like people were actually, I don't know, so many people that followed us from day one
Yeah.
would say to us, I remember all this.
Yeah.
When people were going, oh, you Warren people. I was like, we're not any Warren people. We're just,
Yeah.
But that's pretty much how it started, and then from there, there's obviously just been a progression.
Yeah, I mean, obviously from what you've said there, sort of loads of questions emerge from what you've said. I mean, so I suppose, well, I was going to plug you a little bit more about the kind of Ricky Hatton security thing originally, but I was going to say, because obviously if you look at your sheer size and presence, you look like you're probably quite a handy fella. But then I think when people get to know you, they realise you're quite you're a nice bloke.
Yeah.
Couldn't imagine you being violent. So I think when they actually get to know who you are via the camera, it probably comes as a surprise that you were hired as a security guard. But you've cleared up there that it wasn't just as a security guard.
It wasn't. I wouldn't say it was specifically Ricky was saying, right, you're the toughest, hardest person I know. I want you next to me. It wasn't a case of that, and it was never a case of that. It was a case of I was always with Ricky throughout the camp.
Yeah.
So if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, it wasn't a case of you previously being a doorman and he thought this guy's a hard fella.
No.
Yeah,
it was more based on our friendship back then.
Yeah. Okay, well, you allude there to a few of the nights out you'd had with Ricky prior to him hiring you.
Yeah.
Obviously, Ricky, he's a renowned character and a very well-loved, well-liked character. Are you at liberty to divulge any kind of funny drinking stories you've shared with Ricky from back in the day?
To be honest, I haven't been drinking for that long. Like, it's not really an important thing, but I've only been drinking for the last year of my life. So back then, I wasn't a drinker. So when I was out with Ricky, it was kind of a case of like, you know, I was out and stone cold sober. And don't get me wrong, of most of the nights I was out with Ricky, that he wasn't drinking anyway. It was just when I say nights out, probably more specific to stuff where he'd been doing like his stand-up tour thing he was doing, dinner shows and things like that, where sort of I'd gone to them, and then from then we've gone out after, and but it was before the camp with Manny Pacquiao. So.
Okay, so is it Eddie Hearn that's driven you to drink?
No one's driven me to it. I've never drunk. Do you know what? I never drunk until the first drink I had was actually when I was 28. Like the first drop of alcohol I ever had was when I was 28, which was like 4 years ago now.
Yeah.
And and then that was for like a week, and then I didn't drink for then 4 years after that until last year. Yeah. Funnily enough, I'm not a raving alcoholic now. Just
like a drink. That's fair enough.
Every now and again.
Yeah. It's. I mean, you mentioned there with the originally with iFILMLONDON, as it was originally called. You did a lot of stuff with films, like behind the scenes, and I noticed when I googled you that you have an IMDb page and you'd featured in a few movies. Yeah. And you'd been on Holby City, is that correct?
Yeah. And EastEnders.
And EastEnders, right? So
and the Bill.
That's an impressive job there. Yeah. I mean, obviously now you do what you do. You're very much focused on boxing, but is it an avenue you'd like to pursue again in the future?
Yeah, definitely. Acting? It's me and James actually both have. I'm not like going over the top about it or anything, but we've had our life from like sort of teens on to mid to late 20s, if you like, has been film based. Like, it's only I've been doing this for the last 3 and a bit years, but before that we were like trying to knock on the door of every film producer, and we were trying to be like, I met James actually on a film set. That's how we actually met in the first place. We met on a film called Big Fat Gypsy Gangster, which starred Ricky Grover. So we met on that set actually doing cameos in that film.
Right.
So,
and this is how IFL spawned. It's like how you, the idea behind it.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that's where that's the first time we'd ever spoke to each other was on this set. So we kind of, and it weren't too long. That was sort of in the summer of 2010. So between the summer of 2010 up until the first thing we'd done was in October 2010. So there wasn't a massive, a great deal of time, if you like. For anything to evolve, it just sort of happened straight after that. Yeah,
and sort of moving back to Ricky, one question I wanted to ask in relation to the boxing events that you cover now. Obviously, you probably accompanied Ricky on a couple of his biggest nights when he was at his peak. Really, the Manny Pacquiao fight, for example, was a massive affair. How does? Because I spoke to Eddie yesterday about what his vision is with British boxing, and you know, he sort of wants to make British boxing sexy, you know, the kind of events that must attend events. How does the sense of occasion and the atmosphere at a Vegas show, like obviously the one you were at with Ricky, compare to like the razzmatazz of a current Matchroom event?
Well, I walked Ricky out of his fight against Manny Pacquiao, and that MGM was full as it can be, so whatever that holds, between 16 and 17,000, I believe. And it's a bit different for that because there was a lot of Brits there, not as many Brits as there for the Floyd Mayweather fight, but there was still in excess of how many Brits in Vegas. How many were actually in the venue, I don't know, but there was a lot of Brits, like between 20 and 20,000 British people had come over for that fight. So you're kind of taken up by this whole English atmosphere, in the MGM Grand,
Yeah.
where normally for fights that I've been to in America,
Yeah.
not specific to MGM Grand, the crowds for me don't really compete to what we have here, depending on the show. Like I was in Ireland recently, in Northern Ireland, at Carl Froch's Belfast show.
Yeah.
10,000 crowd there at the Odyssey, and it's just unbelievable. And I've just, I've never seen anything like that in America. I've never been to a show out there where the crowd are that focused around one fighter.
Yeah. So it's not the sense of, there isn't the sense sometimes of getting behind their local hero kind of thing in America. They make,
yeah, I mean, I'm sure they do, and I'm sure. But I mean, listen, I don't live over there, so obviously my fights that I do go over there are limited in terms of, in comparison rather to the shows that I do here or a B2 here.
Yeah.
But we get, it's kind of like we see it from all angles. So I've been in like Hull before, where there's like outdoor 6, 7, 8,000 people in Hull, to being in 2,000, 3,000 people in the ice arena, and then you go from that to like Froch Grove's 20,000 at Thingy, Froch Kessler at the O2, and it's kind of like, it's different for it's different for every time you're at a show.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that you could necessarily compare it to every show, or if you're looking at a big show, say something that a venue that holds similar to the MGM Grand, then I think the atmosphere in the MGM is, because it's taken over by Brits. The ones I've been to have been taken over by Brits.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, and you're in Vegas. It's like the whole MGM thing.
So it's almost like sort of Brits abroad atmosphere, the party atmosphere, and you kind of Britain abroad, isn't it really?
Yeah, I mean, I went to Mayweather Guerrero last in Vegas, which was this time last year.
Yeah.
And I can't compare that atmosphere at Mayweather Guerrero to that of like Mayweather Hatton or Hatton Pacquiao.
Right.
It doesn't compare.
Yeah, I'm with
for
you.
me.
Because obviously, because Guerrero, I mean, he's Mexican heritage, but he's an American Mexican, isn't he? So he probably doesn't get the hardcore Mexican element.
Yeah, I just think that we've got our travelling fans, when they get, don't get me wrong, we've had a couple of fights last year in America, or a few fights in America last year.
Yeah.
But the days of like seeing someone like Ricky Hatton being able to take tens of thousands of people across the pond to there is.
Okay, I mean, hypothetically, say there was the discussion prior to the rematch of Groves and Froch being announced. There was talk potentially of Froch versus Chavez Jr. And I think it was mooted for Vegas. Do you think Carl could attract? I mean, Carl has a pretty big fan base in the UK, doesn't he? Do you think Carl could take over 5,000 people from Nottingham, for example?
Yeah, I think Carl Froch could do that quite easily. You see, Carl Froch's profile in the last 2 or 3 years has dramatically rose. And everyone, including non-boxing fans, like casual people that just maybe will talk about a fight loosely in the pub, know Carl Froch is now, and deservedly so. He's been in countless world title fights consecutively for a long time now, and he deserves to be known by not just boxing fans. So I think that, yes, you asked me if he can take 5,000 people from here over to a fight if it was Chavez Jr.
Yeah,
definitely,
comfortably. I
wouldn't see why not.
Yeah. Okay, I was going to ask. I mean, given your role with Ricky, security guard, and now your role with IFL TV, you're very much kind of integral to the UK boxing scene. I bet you've been asked this before, but would a kind of charity boxing event in which you participated interest you in the future?
Yeah, I've had loads of people who ask me to do this, from different avenues, but I don't really have an interest in doing it, if I'm being honest. Like, you know, the charity thing aside, obviously I'd love to do something that was earning money for a specific charity or whatever, but
Just not getting punched in the face.
yeah, no, it's not that. It's just I just don't have. I don't know. I went through a little phase last year where I was kind of up for it, and I was thinking to myself, like, I'd fight like someone like Eddie, like in like a 3-rounder, and then I was up for it for about a few days, and then I lost interest in it very quickly.
Yeah.
So it's not something that I'd completely say I'd never do it, but it's not something right now that I think, because if I really wanted to do it, because James done one.
Right.
James done a white collar fight about a year and a half ago, put himself through like a 3-month camp, took himself away a mile up the road to a gym, and he put himself through it. He had the fight, he lost the fight, but he was given a draw.
Right. Bit of a, was
the
it a bit
people
of
who
a
haven't
packy
watched it, he tells people, well, yeah, I was given the draw. But he knows he lost the fight, but listen, he went in there.
Yeah. Were you judging?
I was filming. I was on the end of the ring with a camera, shouting at him.
Is this on
Yeah, this
IFL?
is on the thing.
I'll have to have a look out for that.
I just kept shouting, put your hands up. That's what I was shouting to him all the way through the fight. But he did it, so I can't knock him for it at all. He's done it. I haven't done it. He's done it. So fair play to him. Put himself through it. Like I said, lost a lot of weight. Yeah. Took it seriously. Filmed his little journey, most of it, and done it.
Fair enough. Yeah, I was going to say, could potentially be awkward if you did fight Eddie and one of you knocked each other out for subsequent interviews. That could be a
very awkward,
funny situation.
Very awkward for Eddie, yeah.